You already know what time it is. Okay, so obviously just got back from the Apple store. It is around 9 o'clock in the morning here. So I got some fresh ears, got a fresh AirPods Pro 3 unit. Let's go ahead and unbox it. I'll give some brief listening impressions. I've been listening to the AirPods Pro 2 all morning, so that should still be somewhat fresh in my mind. And we'll see how it is. All right, let's go. Okay, so straight away unboxing. Same thing you'd expect, basically. New AirPods Pro case with the light not being visible until I assume it's opened. And then you got new pack of ear tips here. Nothing else in the box, no charging cable. I'm pretty sure that's typical nowadays. All right, let's go ahead and take them out, pair them up, and we'll listen. I will say right away, looking at them in the case, they look noticeably different, which I'll put in some B-roll or something here to kind of show the difference in the shell shape, but the shell shape itself is more different than I thought it would be upon first glance. Okay, first impressions of fit. Thank God the comfort is still good. I was really worried. I actually think I might like the fit a little bit more. It says to gently adjust the angle and rotation of each AirPod to get the best comfort. I'll be real, it took 2 seconds, but maybe that's because I'm familiar with in-ear headphones that typically are way less comfortable than this. It remains to be seen how the long-term comfort is going to be. But as of right now, feels pretty good, feels pretty secure. So this morning I've been listening to the new Parcels record, which is called Loved. Incredibly produced band. Like all of their records sound incredible, but it's also like all the instrumentation I kind of index for when I'm listening to music. Thumping kick drums, fat snare drums, really articulate, clean, but still warm guitars. A lot of male vocals, recorded well, organized well, arranged well. So I'm going to listen to my favorite song on this record as of right now, which is called Sorry. And we'll see what I think. Okay, so right away, there are some pretty obvious differences that I think most people are going to hear in the first 5-10 seconds if there's any bass present in the song, which is, yeah, the bass is quite differently presented. I really liked how the AirPods Pro 2 handled its bass, where there wasn't a super distinct shelf that was focused on making the bass seem elevated over everything else. Instead, it was this kind of gradual slope type shelf that maybe was a little less distinct, but it made everything in the track feel more integrated together, so kick drums didn't feel like this separate thing going on from the rest of the music. They sounded like part of the music. On the AirPods Pro 3, it definitely sounds a little bit more disjointed. It sounds more just like mid-bass, just like 60 to 100 hertz. Boom, 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 boom. So not crazy for a product like this, but I will say just for the bass of that song in particular, I do prefer the presentation of the AirPods Pro 2. The mid-range, however, right away I noticed that the vocals on this are a lot more clean, transparent, normal sounding. AirPods Pro 2 has this kind of warm glow to specifically male vocals, but also a lot of other mid-range elements that I actually think is preferable about the AirPods Pro 3 here. I felt like all the vocals in this track and all the layering of the vocals was a lot clearer, but still not thin or anything anywhere near that neighborhood. And I also felt like the guitars on it were a little bit more precise. On the AirPods Pro 2, as a guitarist myself, I tend to find they kind of smear the transients of guitars a little bit, where they sound just a little bit set back and a little bit less intense when there is actually intensity called for in the track. And I feel like with this, the guitars were actually a highlight, and they kind of seem to just sound, again, like the vocals, just a bit more correct, both in terms of how they're layered as well as their overall timbre. So I do prefer the mid-range of the AirPods Pro 3 for that track. The treble is probably going to be a toss-up for people. Frankly, I expected a much bigger difference than I actually got with that track. The AirPods Pro 2 with that track, I get a little bit of mid-treble, low-treble heat, somewhere in that 8 kilohertz region, and it causes vocals to be a little bit scratchy. It was significantly better with the AirPods Pro 3, but cymbals did come forward a little bit. So in that track, there's a drum machine with this kind of synthetic sounding hi-hat, and I noticed that a little bit more with these than I do on the AirPods Pro 2, but I think overall the timbre and the treble and kind of where the peaks and dips are actually aligned overall better for me, such that my main issue with the AirPods Pro 2, which is the kind of scratchiness and overly breathy sound on vocals, was actually a little bit nicer on that track. So now I'm going to listen to a much different track. I'm going to listen to My Full Name by Madison Cunningham, which is a fairly different track in its composition and arrangement. Doesn't have any drums as far as I'm aware. It's more of a kind of folky singer-songwritery arrangement. I don't think there's any bass in the song until the cello halfway through the song. So I wanted to see how it deals with a song that's maybe less aggressive and more about timbre overall. So let's give this a listen and I'll let you guys know what I think. That song rules. There's definitely still that warmth that the AirPods Pro 2 had throughout the mid-range, but just a little bit more articulation and separation across all of the elements. It just sounds like an overall kind of crisper listen through the mids. Whereas in the treble, I basically have the same issues that I have with the AirPods Pro 2. Like, I feel like on this track, the same kind of 8 kilohertz issue showed up for me, whereas upper treble, lower treble, both fine, like totally fine. The bass on this track there was one moment where the bass came in strong and it was like huge. I do think the bass presentation here is probably a little bit much for me. All right, I'm gonna listen to one more song. That's kind of just a song I know really well, which is called A Dream Is All I Know by the Lemon Twigs. Shouts out to Sam for showing me this band. All right, let's go ahead and take a listen. So this is the track that I would say sounded the most different from my impression of the AirPods Pro 2. The V shape kind of came across a little bit more here than on the AirPods Pro 2. The bass, like the kick drum and the plucked bass, the cymbals and the shaker on this track both felt closer to me than the vocals, the piano, the guitar. Even if the timbre for all of those mid-range elements is correct, they all felt slightly set back a little bit too much. Whereas on the AirPods Pro 2, my main impression with this track is actually just that the treble itself is pretty annoying. I actually didn't find it as annoying here. I did find the upper treble more forward, but I don't know if it's how they reshaped the lower and mid treble or what, but I'm not getting the same kind of mid treble issue on this track either. But yeah, so that's going to be it for this. Stay tuned for our full review, and yeah, I'm going to keep listening to this. Later, guys.